Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first Wellbeing Session with myself, Helen Roscoe. Just want to say thank you for being here and joining me for my first conversation this evening. So what do I hope to achieve with these sessions? Really, for me, it's about creating a bridge between the areas that I am most interested or intrigued by and have inspired me over the years. So some of these conversations will be about movement and yoga. Some of these conversations will focus more around well-being, and others will include insights around creativity and nature. So all of those things play a really important role in my life and have inspired me over the years. So this week, I'm chatting to one of my osteopaths, Melissa Lodge, who is also currently attending my online yoga classes on Wednesday evenings. I saw Mel when I was pregnant with both of my pregnancies with Frank and Martha. So we met over 7 years ago when we first moved up here to Manchester. And I always found her to be very nurturing and reassuring, and I felt very safe having her as a practitioner. And she not only supported me from a treatment point of view, but also very holistically from a therapeutic point of view. I used to be an athlete, and I've got a lot of niggles and former injuries that I've experienced during my time as an athlete, which quite often will come up to the surface every so often. And for me, osteopathy has been a treatment that has been my go-to form of physical therapy in some ways. Pretty much around the same time that I started practicing yoga, actually. And I've just always really enjoyed the approach. It's the only way that's really ever worked for me as a complement to the other things that I do in terms of self-care. So Mel and I we'll always chat, and I'm going to try not to ramble on too long here, but we always have so many conversations around well-being, around our experience of yoga, the practice of self-care, nature, and she's experienced my experiential workshops too. So we have quite a lot of crossovers when it comes to osteopathy and yoga. And I guess what I'm trying to do really is perhaps provide you with some insights this evening as to what osteopathy may be and how it can be useful as a form of practice, but then also just to kind of maybe go into some areas that you may be less familiar with. And yeah, I hope that you enjoy the conversation. And if you have any questions, feel free to add them into the chat. You'll need to be logged into YouTube in order to actually do that. So you can leave a live chat in the live feed. We probably won't answer them straight away because we've got quite a few things to talk about. But towards the end of the session, I can definitely look and see if any of you have any questions for myself or Mel. So yeah, we'll get started. Hi, Mel.
Hi, Helen.
Hi. How are you? How are you feeling this evening?
I'm good. I'm well, thank you. I'm well,
Oh, that's
thankfully.
good. Yeah, and
How about you?
yeah, I'm good. I'm quite excited. I'm quite nervous. I've been quite nervous about this, but I'm really excited because we've always got so much to talk about. So
Yeah.
I think it's a good opportunity for us to kind of get some things out in the air and out in the open. Something that I wanted to start with our practice, with our conversation, is just to maybe just tap into what's happening from a lockdown point of view. How are you finding the change in pace of life at the moment?
Yeah. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to chat. It's a really exciting opportunity for me too. So thank you,
Yeah,
Helen.
no
It's
worries.
really
Thank you.
lovely, lovely, lovely to be here. So in answer to your question, I guess probably like most people, a mixed bag really. I'm sort of definitely welcoming certain elements of this situation we find ourselves in, and finding other things a little bit tricky. the things I'm enjoying, I guess, is just slowing down in terms of having more time. In some ways, my time load is different in terms of my family being at home and not having as much time to myself, but not rushing around. I'm welcoming. And yeah, just enjoying the fun aspects of parenting, I guess. Finding new ways to communicate, I suppose, has been a big theme in our house, perhaps in many houses. I'm really missing not seeing patients. I'm really finding that hard. And I guess as a family, and I guess most people are experiencing this, unless you're ultra introverted, it's just that social contact with your extended family and friends. I think, we're all missing that. So, we're such deeply social beings, aren't we? But how about you?
Yeah, so it's definitely a change in pace of life. I mean, obviously I've moved all of my yoga classes online, and I'm not teaching as much actually, which is quite nice. I felt like I was ready for some kind of change of some sort. I want, obviously, without all the negative kind of and the distressing side of what's happening from the coronavirus or the COVID-19 point of view. In some ways, it's been a good opportunity for me and for us as a family to kind of reset a little. And it's challenging. It's definitely come with challenges. Martha's 3, Frank's 6. And their energy is just something that I could, when this first started happening, we were just absolutely shattered. We just couldn't even, think about what we were going to cook for dinner. Just kind of getting through the day. Whereas over time, we've definitely found a rhythm, and it's been quite nice for us to bond as a family. The children have made it really enjoyable for us, to be honest. We've really taken care of ourselves, and it's been quite nice teaching in a different way. But like you, I do thrive off that human contact, and just to be able to give some people a hug, just my parents or in-laws, or everyone's just so disparate. And it's challenging from that point of view. But just in terms of our immediate family, the little 4, our kind of little bubble, we've been coping really well. And it's just given me an opportunity to do some different things, such as launch this platform as well. Something that I just wanted to ask you, obviously you've been coming to my weekly yoga classes, and you mentioned to me a little while ago that it's been your kind of your must-have within your week. So perhaps you could just share a little bit about that, about how you're finding the yoga classes at the moment, and perhaps some little things that you're doing in order to help with the pace or help with the kind of restrictions that you're experiencing.
So, well, like you, I really love being outdoors and sort of being in nature, which is a big element of how you teach and what you bring to your teaching. So I guess we've tried to spend as much time outdoors as possible, and really enjoying this time of year. And the weather's been amazing, and
it has, hasn't it?
It's really, I mean, some of your emails that come through about the classes, you invoke certain thought processes about, the seasons, which is, so good to be reminded of. And we are having a really glorious spring. So that's really helped, obviously. But yeah, for me, I've practiced yoga for about 16 years now, since I qualified. And in the last 2.5 years, I've also been practicing meditation, and they are definitely my sort of go-to activities to look after myself. And I've really enjoyed, obviously, coming to workshops of yours in the past, but not living too near you. It's been a bit trickier to do a sort of weekly class. So it's been really exciting to be able to do an online class. And I've had many yoga teachers over the years, and many great ones, and you're absolutely no exception. And I just find your approach just a little bit different, and I'm really enjoying exploring it. And it's been an absolute godsend at the moment. I get to Wednesday evening, and perhaps the homeschooling and the kind of constant being with the children, as much as I love them, it sort of leaves you a bit frazzled at times. So being able to come to your class has been really fantastic. And I think you just allow that kind of calming of the nervous system, just connecting with your breathing. The way that you guide us through the session is very, I find, in a way I've not really experienced before. It's very, very creative and very poetic in the language that you use, which really creates this journey that you go through. And it really allows you to connect to your internal world, which is obviously, so much of what we do in yoga. But also that reconnection to your external environment, and that sort of interplay between the two, and the language that you use. So,
I mean, I think at the moment it's quite useful to have that connection to our external environment, because we're so restricted by so many other things. To just kind of be able to connect to what's happening in terms of the season, and in terms of maybe the more immediate relationships that are occurring or arising around you. If you can find ways to tap into those things in a joyful way, then it's really going to help you get through the day, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What I was going to say
I hear your voice at times of the day, and I think, yes, I must remember that. And it just, that I can just permeate the day with those things. It's really, really,
it's the
really
same
helpful.
with me, because with my teacher, like you've been able to work with me weekly, I've been able to work with my yoga teacher weekly, who's based in Leicester. That's Zoe Martin, Yoga Leicester. And I haven't been to a weekly class of Zoe's since we moved up to Manchester. We're talking over 7 years since I've been in a weekly class with Zoe. I've done retreats, I've done workshops, and I've done one-to-one sessions. I've been in person with her, but not in a kind of continual weekly class. And I did the first block of 4. And then I just said to Dave, I really need to continue with this, because it's providing me with exactly that. It's providing me with a sense of continuity and a sense of reassurance. And it's really inspiring me. I think during this time, it's really useful to have these little pockets of self-care or practices that you go to, whether that's with a teacher or whether that's meditation that you do for yourself. But just to have something that is, continuity and inspiration, really, to sort of, like you say, have the little kind of things that feed in then as the week goes on. Okay, so we better start talking about osteopathy. So from my point of view, it's always been my go-to practice in terms of physical treatment, and I see it as very much a holistic form of treatment. I don't just necessarily go to an osteopath because I've got a back problem. I'll go and see my osteopath because of my shoulder, because of an accident that I've had, or because I'm feeling fatigued, or because I'm needing just that kind of check and just kind of getting my body back in balance. And I do practice, I have a daily yoga practice. I do take care of myself. But, when you're carrying children around, and when you're lugging stuff around, and you're trying to fit things in here and there in short snippets of the day, sometimes you can be a bit careless with your body. And for me, it's been one of those practices that's just always really worked. So firstly, for anyone who may be new to osteopathy, I'd just like Mel to sort of explain for us what osteopathy is in terms of your kind of description, your explanation. Some people may have different ideas in the same way as yoga. And
Sure.
I see it very much as a form of holistic physical therapy. So kind of, if you could answer the question, what is osteopathy, and maybe kind of cross over into that holistic kind of application of osteopathy, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So osteopathy is, a holistic manual treatment. You could categorize us in the same sort of ilk as physiotherapists and maybe chiropractors, different physical therapists. It's quite unique in its approach. In its philosophy, I would say, is where it's quite unique. Certainly, if you look at osteopathy from a historical perspective and evolving profession. But essentially, it's a form of diagnosis and treatment of a wide range of medical conditions. And obviously, a large part of our practice will be sort of muscle, joint, and sort of musculoskeletal injury or conditions. But there is scope within osteopathy to look at somebody holistically from just their general well-being. So just an example of something else which might present in your practice is migraine or headaches is just one example of a sort of thing that's other than just kind of back pain or joint things. But in terms of we really look at the structure of the body. We look at shape, we look at posture, we look at what I would term morphology, and we look at function. So we look at how somebody is moving, their body language, how they move within themselves, their sort of active movements, and then their passive movement as well when we are sort of moving a body around. And I guess the essential principle is to try to work towards the sort of harmonious working of the skeleton, of the muscles, of the connective tissues, ligaments, as a way to aid, in turn, to aid the optimum functioning of the various body systems, so circulatory systems, nervous system, immune system, endocrine, etc. We're very hands-on. If you come to see an osteopath, you would spend a large part of the session with the osteopath with hands on the body, doing certain techniques. And this might be anything from very gentle techniques, which you could term sort of the more craniosacral types of techniques, which I'll go into a little bit more if you'd like me to later on.
Definitely.
And then ranging into sort of more significant pressure, we can apply all manner of different techniques. You learn hundreds really in your training, and it's good to have that toolkit to be able to apply different techniques to a patient with different needs, and obviously practitioners vary in their approaches as well. But osteopaths, we are, that obviously forms a large part of what we do, but osteopaths also have a really good grounding in all aspects of well-being. We are holistic therapists. We think constantly about the body and how it interacts with its external environment. So we would have a sound, not expert knowledge, but a sound knowledge in diet and hydration, exercise, restorative sleep patterns, that sort of thing. So we sort of spend quite a lot of time advising and educating as well as part of our treatments or consultation.
Okay, so you mentioned briefly then about cranial osteopathy or cranial treatments. What's the difference between working with somebody cranially as opposed to perhaps more structurally or hands-on? I mean, I have had experience of both. And you've mentioned before in previous conversations that very much about that observation, the watching, the listening, the feeling, and kind of what are you doing? It's such a subtle treatment, cranial osteopathy.
Yes.
Like, what are you actually doing?
Yes, it's really quite tricky to explain, but I'll see if I can try and do it justice. Essentially, cranial osteopathy is osteopathy. It's just a technique that is used, and it's it's a tool to try to connect with the body, and so it's a very subtle technique, but it can be very deep and powerful in its essence, and it is very much your kind of, you know, observing, feeling, listening with your hands. I mean, we listen and look with our eyes and ears as osteopaths, but you're obviously a big part of what we do is with our hands as well. So it's feedback from the body on a very subtle level. And a tissue, you know, the sort of the sensations or impressions or feel is, you know, the sort of a bit of a glossary of terminology that we might use, but you might put your hands on and feel that something feels very compressed or feels very twisted, or that it lacks a certain vitality, or disconnected, for example. And it's just connecting with that. And really what we're trying to do as osteopaths is make that connection between, you know, really listening to the body and applying our physical touch, and that might be in a cranial way, or it might be in a sort of more structural way. And it's that meeting of, I suppose, hopefully the intelligence of the osteopath and their experience, and then also the intelligence of the body, and really, really tuning in and listening to that, what you're feeling. And it's that connection which I think if you do your job well, and you have a patient who is trusting and open, and no matter whether they're a baby or a, you know, an adult or whatever age, then that is where you can facilitate a shift towards a better state of health. And actually, it's really the body that does it. That's where the magic happens. It's nature. It's the intelligence of the body, and the osteopath just hopefully is skilled and trained in recognizing and maybe guiding in an intelligent way to, you know, coaxing a shift towards a more balanced state, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely makes sense, because that's kind of what we're doing in yoga as well, or in a mindful movement-based practice. We're just trying to kind of we're just doing it ourselves, but sometimes there's only so much we can do ourselves. Sometimes we need that interaction with a professional such as yourself, who can actually bring your knowledge and your kind of intelligence to it. But I think, it's really interesting. I've always been amazed at how well I've responded. And you've said before that you find people who tend to already have a bit of a self-care based practice in place, whether that's yoga or whether that is Tai Chi or any kind of mindfulness based practice, that they respond so much more positively and so much more quickly through their treatments with you. Why do you think that is then? Is it because they're already able to make those connections to what it is that you're hoping to release or find balance? They have a greater understanding of their body. I mean, you've mentioned about me before, with my understanding of body through being an athlete. Coming to you, it was fairly straightforward really how I was able to progress. But for some people, obviously they don't have that background or that self-care based practice, so I'm guessing it takes quite a lot longer for them to kind of unblock and restore the balances.
Definitely I think there's just some patients will have a greater connection with their own sense of their physical self, and others will be very disconnected, and it's just a different journey, I guess. Although I think there are patients that are very connected, but they maybe just naturally have more challenges, so it might not necessarily be straightforward. Everyone is different, I guess.
I think
but yes, I think to have that
oh, so sorry, no, you carry on.
No, it's just I think to have that sort of self, that when a patient's quite self-aware and doing a lot of the self-care stuff already, I think my job is easier in most cases, definitely.
Yeah, and I mean, it sounds like, especially with the cranial work, it's very subtle, and yoga is also really subtle.
Yeah.
So I can see how, just by the way you kind of describe how you do, why it works for me. What I wanted.
Well, and likewise, Helen, because for me, in your classes, that's why I've said to you in the past, I find your classes very osteopathic,
I love
because
that word. This is partly why I wanted to have the conversation with you, because you said
yeah,
that it's like I'm teaching in an osteopathic style, and
yes,
it's really interesting because yourself and Jose, who is my other osteopath, like you're both really into mindfulness and meditation and yoga, and you both have this mindful movement based kind of ethic, and the self-care kind of just oozes out of both of you. So to kind of have both of you at my yoga classes at various instances, it makes sense to me, but I'm still kind of like, I it's very intuitive. I guess the way I'm teaching is very intuitive, and I think you've mentioned before my background of anatomy. I mean, I said to you in our last conversation, it's very experiential. If you give me a textbook on anatomy, I'll really struggle with that. But if you can if I can be guided through something, and that's sort of what happens in an osteopathic appointment or a session, you're kind of being guided through your body. And I think because I have that experience of being an athlete in the past and having had various muscle injuries and, muscular and skeletal, as well as various other things such as burnout, which we're going to come on to shortly, then I kind of know what you're doing. Like I know what it is because I can feel it. Yeah. Because I have a connection to that part of my body. And so then when I'm teaching a yoga class, it's the same thing. I have a connection to that part of what it is that I'm teaching, whether that's a physical thing or whether that's, and then I'm kind of able then to expand that and take it into the realm of creativity and nature. What I would like to ask you is generally, so we'll just come on to this, who are your clients and why do they come to you? So we know that you work with, I haven't explained this, but you can explain that, Mel. So who are your clients mainly? Yeah, sure. And why are they coming to you? What are they coming to you for?
So I trained I've had my undergraduate training, and then I had my a postgraduate diploma in classical osteopathy, which was tackling a little bit more than just musculoskeletal problems, and it sort of opened my eyes. I was taught by an incredible third generation osteopath, and then I went on to train with the Osteopathic Centre for Children, and I did a 2-year master's degree in paediatric osteopathy, Masters of Science. So that really gave me a foundation in paediatrics, and I suppose you could call it obstetric osteopathy. So a large part of my practice is treating babies and children, and women in pregnancy and postnatally and beyond, once a mum, always a mum, right? So, and I see, adults, but I see sort of babies, children of all ages, teens, preschool, school-age children. When it comes to explaining what they come in with, I have to be a little bit careful about what I can say. Yeah. We're slightly constrained, and I'll explain why. Unfortunately, there is quite a lack of evidence-based evidence to what we do in a pediatric and, I suppose, obstetric sense, which is a shame, but it's partly to do with funding, and also to do with the fact that putting an osteopathic treatment into a sort of medical allopathic model of research is really quite challenging, because there's such complexity to what we do that it's very difficult to separate things out and test things, and it's quite complicated. So suffice to say, children come in to see me for all sorts of reasons. Mainly the little tiny ones come in either as a checkup or perhaps mums have a specific concern. But that really new sort of neonatal period, maybe they've had a tricky birth or a sort of complicated pregnancy and they want to get checked, or babies are unsettled for many reasons. So we kind of just really support and guide through that initial sort of transition. It's such a huge transition of life, perhaps one of the biggest, from being in that comfy womb to being suddenly, exposed to gravity and, all the different, sensory overload that you get from that. And then in terms of moving forwards from that initial stage, that first year of life is there's an exponential amount of growth and change and development that takes place. Really, the most exponential growth is in utero. From conception, there is such a massive amount that happens in that period. But so, to a certain extent, that has slowed down. But nevertheless, you're not going to get as much change within a body than during the first year or certainly 2 years of life. So it's a time that you can really support and nurture and help, a physical development. And then moving forward into preschool years and school years, there's I do see children for kind of muscle and joint and postural reasons and scoliosis and pain and those sorts of things, which there is evidence for, and then mums in pregnancy and beyond, sciatica, back pain, pelvic problems, neck and shoulder pain, and I could go on really, but that's a sort of general. I probably see maybe 50 to 65% of my practice is pediatric.
Yeah. And with that, so I mean, obviously I took my two children in to see you when they were newborn and then through to kind of toddler age. But shall we just have a little chat about what we can learn from children in terms of how you're working with them? So from an observation point of view, from the way they interact, you've mentioned before that like children can kind of offer us so much. So yeah, I'd just be interested to sort of hear your kind of take on that a little bit when you have children to work with in your space, and obviously parents are around and you have toys. Like it's a really kind of, you make it feel very familiar, so they feel really at home and at ease when they're around you. And I'm guessing children just love coming back to see you. But what is it that you're kind of seeing a child from birth and then these patterns develop? What is it that you kind of observe and notice over time? Thanks, Helen. So it's nice to hear that your experience with me was positive with your two. I guess it's, there are some children which you have to work harder with to kind of gain trust, but essentially it's really important. Any pediatric osteopath will know and do the same, is that building that trust. So often I do it through play or sort of just chatting and talking and observing and watching and listening. And they generally really love it. They really enjoy, any child loves that kind of focused attention. We live in a world where it's hard to get. Yeah. Especially if you have more than one child or, life's busy. It's a really special thing to really just be seen for exactly what you're doing at that moment. So that's the nice thing. And it's also quite reassuring.
I guess what we can learn from children, for me, I just think, children are just so intelligent. I mean, in terms of sort of their physical body, we can learn so much from how they communicate, how they move, just in terms of a sort of postural perspective and how they learn to kind of, get up to standing upright and all the developmental phases of, you know, rolling and crawling and, you know, all of those sorts of things. In terms of what we can learn from them, I just think what they communicate via their body language, via their movements, via their behavior, via their sort of verbal language as well. It's just we can learn a lot in terms of you know, actually children naturally will drive towards, if they don't feel good, they immediately let you know. And it's I think as we grow and sort of, I suppose, self-regulate more, you know, and learn to kind of not have to, you know, our needs to be met so immediately. You know, you can go beyond that as you know, growing to kind of then becoming disconnected to actually what your body really needs. So you know, and children are really intuitive. I had a little girl just recently whose mum called me up and spoke to me because she'd had a little accident and she wanted some reassurance. And this little 6-year-old, she'd just done exactly what she needed to do in terms of looking after herself. She was a bit shocked and she was a bit in pain, and her body just told her what she needed to do. And thankfully her mum and dad really supported her really well. But you know, we can learn a lot from you know, just that kind of communication. I think as you develop and grow, you've got more layers of complexity on the top to kind of peel away.
Yeah, it's kind of what we're doing in yoga as well, is we're kind of just trying to undo those layers a little bit, just strip those layers a little bit further away so that we can really feel and express how we feel more naturally, more openly, and not be afraid to experience pain, and not be afraid to kind of, you know, live through those emotions, because that's what we need to do. And I think as children, like you say, there's no hiding. Like, they're just so open and honest, and they just express themselves so freely. You know, it's kind of what we're hoping to do in yoga, really, is just to kind of get into that inner child a little bit, so we're less restricted by all the layers that we've been placing upon ourselves over the years.
Yes. And I think the movement patterns that we go through in your sessions, I mean, essentially, as osteopaths, obviously we're kind of taking the body through certain movement patterns, but to really experience a healthy kind of tank of movement, you need to vary your movement. You know, everybody knows the research that cross training is kind of more healthy than necessarily sort of going into one specific kind of activity all the time. And the kind of range of movement patterns that we go through in a session with you, you know, I've done yoga for a long time, and I still just come across new things. I'm like, oh, I've not done this one before, and it's just a new exploration. Yeah, and it's really good. That's what the body wants. That's what the body needs. It needs, you know, the more different types of activity, the more movement patterns that you can put your body through, instead of, you know, sticking to the same ones, is going to nourish your joints, your muscles, your fluids within your body in a way that, you know, that's really beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. Just before, I'm just a bit concerned about time. So something that I want to touch on is, you've mentioned in conversation about you see quite a bit of burnout. And so what I wanted to just ask about that, it's mainly women that you treat, isn't it? Is that right? Yeah. So, and mainly mothers. Am I right in?
Yeah, I would say a large majority. Yeah.
And so people that are coming to you with burnout, I mean, what are they kind of presenting? Like, how can you detect that in terms of then coming to you for a session?
Yeah, it presents in different ways. It may be, you know, pain, it may be tiredness, it may be anxiety, and often a feeling of discomfort somewhere within the body, and it's usually one specific thing, maybe back pain or that sort of thing. But it's a sense of just really fatigued. So when you get your hands on the tissues, there's a sense of that they can feel quite disconnected maybe, or just tired, dehydrated sometimes. And maybe posturally, you can just see the strain patterns. So
that's really interesting, because I find it amazing that just by you kind of putting your hands on somebody, you can kind of detect that there is fatigue in the muscles. You can almost, it is so subtle, but I just find it amazing that you can kind of pick up on that. I mean, I guess a lot of the time, body language has a lot to say for people, how they, like you say, how they present themselves. I experienced burnout as an athlete. I was basically diagnosed with overtraining syndrome, which I guess nowadays would probably be burnout, because these terms have changed so much over the years. And I was lying, I just remember really vividly, and it's something that I can always go to when I know that I'm kind of really fatigued. Hasn't happened very often in my life, but I just remember sort of lying in bed and I just had this real ache around my kidneys, around my back, and I'd just be lying there in bed and that whole area would just be throbbing, and it's just almost like I couldn't move, I couldn't, but then I'd still manage to pick myself up and try and get myself to some sort of training session. And it was only because I went to see a dietitian that she thought, I think we need to do some investigating here, that I started having blood tests and started having kind of more people look into it. And so the only remedy really that I had from that point on was rest. And I did a session with Donna Fahy over the weekend, who's a New Zealand teacher. She's really well known in the yoga world. And she was talking about this, and there's been studies, with athletes in just trying to, and I've obviously gone into the world of athlete, but we're talking about day-to-day people as well, who will just try and find that fix for recovery, whether that is some kind of supplement, whether it's the vitamins, or whether it's kind of energy drinks or caffeine. Whereas actually the only thing that can really cure us or help us is sleep. And we're just always like fighting against it, aren't we? We're just to lie down, and have a nap in the day. I used to have a nap in the day all the time, like even before having children, after having children. I've kind of broken the habit. I wish I could slip back into that again, because I do think it would help people. I don't know about you, but I think if everybody had like a 15-minute power nap in the middle of the day, that would make a massive difference to how they feel from a fatigue point of view, fresh perspective, kind of just almost like a reset for the day.
Yes, yeah.
But it is hard when you're a mother and you've got, whether it's a newborn or whether it's a toddler and an older child. It's just, and especially at the moment, especially with all the homeschooling that's taking place, I'm guessing there's quite a bit of burnout taking place right now, because people just are probably pushing and trying to do what,
and people are dealing with.
Yeah,
they could really do with an osteopath. And I think there's this element on the top of
sorry, Mel. There's a little bit of a delay, isn't there, every so often? So
no, it's fine. Yeah, there is. It's okay. It's okay. No, you're absolutely, everything you say I completely agree with. And it's that extra element, I think, at the moment, of this sort of uncertainty of this sort of strange world that we find ourselves in. So there's the kind of mental, maybe emotional stress on the top of the day-to-day stress, which is tricky. And if we talk about this a lot about taking that time, and obviously for some mums, mums who are in difficult circumstances, maybe single mums or have very young children, lots of kind of young children, time is just so difficult to find. But what I try to say to patients and message across is that even just a minute of your time to try to stop and pause will have a beneficial effect. Whether you're with your children or not, it's always easier when they're kind of in bed or sleep or whatever, but to just take that time to just breathe. And that's what your classes and anyone that practices yoga will have that ingrained, or certainly, because I mean, I've been doing yoga for a long time, but I still forget to breathe when life's busy. And it's just that planting that seed of, okay, what do I need right now? Just what does my body feel like it needs? Do I just need to sit down and have a cup of tea, and or lie down, let my children lie all over me, or instead of just the next thing? It's incredibly hard to do when you're trying to keep things moving.
I mean, just that one breath, like a mindful breath, will make all the difference. Okay, so
or moving your body in a way that's the yoga postures that I've learned with you or over the years, kind of integrating those into your day when you're doing the laundry or preparing your food, or when you're lifting your baby or shopping or loading the dishwasher or whatever boring job you're doing at the time. If you can actually engage your body in a way that's a little bit mindful, that is going to heal you as well. And if you get into the routine of doing it, it's useful. It's a useful
really useful
tool.
And I mean, at the moment, people can't see you for their treatment.
No.
So this is really what they need to be doing at the moment, isn't it? Is sort of the tools that you've provided them with, because I know sometimes you give them physical maybe movements to do, and almost like a rehab kind of yoga approach to having that support. This is a really crucial time at the moment for self-care, and just taking those mindful movements, the stretches, working on your stability, sitting outside with nature. This is the time when we need to be doing it, because we can't see people like Mel. We can't kind of get our fix through our kind of therapist as much.
I need my fixes as well. I'm missing my osteopaths.
I know. It's tough. So just before we close, Mel, I just wanted to ask you what you love about being an osteopath. You mentioned before in conversation that it's your freedom. So can you just tell me a little bit, and tell people a little bit about that freedom, and then we will just have a little chat about maybe what's going to be different for you, or what you imagine to be different moving forwards with the COVID-19 situation that we're in.
I guess I've just always been fascinated with the human body from a young age, really. Being involved in sport and a bit of contemporary dance at school. And then really interested in sort of biology and the sort of scientific side of the body, and that's developed over the years into I guess from a left brain perspective, more the scientific world, into a more of a right brain, more intuitive and thinking and feeling world, I suppose. But I always marvel over the absolute innate kind of ability of the body to move towards health, even in a really, really unwell person. You have that ability, that it's innate till the day that you die. And I find it really fascinating. And I guess people arrive in my clinic in a state where they may have just a bit of a barrier or a block to their full expression, or maybe they're on a journey where they're really unwell or in pain, and they're kind of slowly moving towards a better state of health, and you sort of intercept them along wherever they are. And I guess it's a real, if you do your job well as an osteopath, which hopefully you try to do most of the time, you don't always get it right, which is why I really value my support network in terms of other healthcare professionals around me, which I value and need a lot. But if you do your job well, it's really a privilege, I think, to just steer somebody in the right direction. You know, even if it's a tiny baby or somebody of an older age, you know, that you can feel that shift, and it just feels it feels a really rewarding thing to be able to help with, really. And yeah, I guess I just find yeah, that sense of freedom for me is a kind of intellectual thing as well as a physical thing. You know, being an osteopath is, you know, sort of you're needing your physical body as well as your mental intellect and you know, emotional connection. So it's all three communicating with another person. It's a really, yeah, I'll never be bored, I don't think, in this job. So it's freeing in many ways. Definitely, it's hard at times, and sometimes I don't do a very good job, and I need help, or you know, we're slightly on the wrong path, and we need to reevaluate, or I need the help of other people. But you know, that's part of any job, I imagine.
That is part of any job. I mean, I quite often see my yoga teacher for supervision when I'm working with one-to-one students, because you just need that little bit of guidance and reassurance that when you're, you know, the people are putting a lot of trust in your hands.
Yeah.
So, you know, it does take time sometimes, and you do need that reassurance as well from other people, from other practitioners.
Yeah, absolutely.
So are we okay to bring it towards a close, Mel? Yeah,
absolutely. Gosh, it's gone quickly.
There's just a question that I know, just there's a question that I kind of want to ask, and this is a question that I'll be asking people during the time of lockdown, and also just maybe beyond a little bit. But what do you imagine will be different for you moving forward? You know, when do you envisage being able to get back into your practice? And Mel's practice is in Hale, Altrincham, Manchester, by the way. But you know, yeah. So when do you hope you'll be able to do that? And then maybe just in terms of that more holistic approach, what do you hope will be different for people from society? You know, in terms of our experiences during this time, maybe something positive that people can take away. If there's anything that you can just sort of bring in there for us.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get back to practice as soon as possible. It's a bit tricky with my kids, and sort of schooling and childcare, so that obviously needs to be taken care of. But yeah, there's a lot of talk about us moving back into practice and getting fully kitted up with PPE. And we'll all have to be involved in very stringent hygiene and you know, social distancing and all of that, you know, protocols, which is really obviously super important at the moment. So it's a significant unrest in the profession. It's hit like many professions. It's hit us hard. It's, you know, it's really interrupted our way of working. So it's tricky, and the thought of working with all this sort of barrier of kind of equipment is tricky. But I think it's just something that we'll have to adapt to. And patients will still have a need to come, and I guess it's just going to evolve as things evolve. And yeah, people are really keen, I think, to get back. I think what's good that's come out of the situation is that we have discovered new ways of providing our expertise outside of the kind of traditional setting. Obviously, we want to get back to doing our hands-on work, of course, because that's such the essence of what we do. But I hope that, I hope that we can move forward in a positive way in terms of, I think there is a movement happening anyway, and this is just completely heightened, you know, everybody's awareness of prioritizing health above everything, and what we can do to try to keep ourselves healthy. And I think hopefully we will move. I feels like, to me, we're in a bit of a paradigm shift. This is a moment in history, isn't it? There is, you know, the scientists are going, you know, crazy with their research, and, you know, it's just going to be very different. And I hope that people will try to bring elements of natural healthcare, the intelligence of nature into their lives as much as possible, to try to be as healthy as they can to withstand what's happening at the moment.
Definitely. I totally agree. I'm going a bit croaky. All the talking. Yeah. Okay. So thanks very much, Mel. Maybe we can continue the conversation at some point. Obviously, this is the first time that I've done anything like this, so there's always going to be something that maybe we've missed, and there's always going to be more for us to talk about. I might just get some water actually, so just bear with me. Dave's going to get me some water.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah.
No, there's I could talk to you for a long time, Helen. Well, there's so many overlaps, and I think
definitely, yeah. No, there are, and we will. Thank you. I was going to say that I've put your links in the chat for this YouTube conversation, so the links to your website are on there, and maybe we can get some nice snippets from it as well for us to share with people at a later date. We can kind of edit it down and maybe get a few things for you. But yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of your week, Mel. I hope that maybe there's something clearer for you with your practice in terms of how that may be able to move forward. I hope the homeschooling continues to go well. I saw your VE Day presentation the other day that looked amazing, that you've been working on with the children. You can send it over to us.
Is that now? I can't remember. Well, we're having good days and bad days, so
yeah, and also
that was perhaps a better time.
This reminded me, I was thinking the other day that we'll bring the children over, so when things are fairly back to normal, however that may be, we'll bring Martha and Frank over for a treatment as well, because it's been quite some time, and they'll love it as well. I'll see you on Wednesday for yoga, hopefully. And
looking forward to it already.
Yeah, let me just check in with Dave actually.
Highlight of the week.
Let me just check in with Dave and see if there are any questions, but I don't think there were, but never mind. We'll get there. We'll get some questions at some point. If anybody does have any questions retrospectively, if you end up listening to this and you want to just ask me a question, or if you have a question for Mel, you can always email me. It's yoga@helenroscoe.com. But yeah, thanks, Mel. We'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, Helen. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Okay. All right then. Okay, so there you go. That was my first wellbeing session with Melissa Lodge. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. Perhaps we were rambling a little bit at various stages, but that's what happens. We've known each other for a long time. So next week my session will be a yoga session, so I'm going to be kind of putting some questions out there as to what people might like for me to explore. If you do have any comments, please feel free to leave them during the live chat or even afterwards retrospectively, and if you like what I'm doing, please do subscribe to the channel. In the meantime, I hope you have a good week, and yeah, thanks for coming. Thank you.